Breaking right now, the deep state cover-up over the death behind bars of Britain's political prisoner Peter Lynch continues. I am absolutely furious about this. New details emerging about very obvious victimization of this brilliant father of four who was completely unfairly jailed after the so-called riots following the Southport massacre, when he was not involved in any violence whatsoever. And as you know, I have been speaking about Peter Lynch for the past year. I'm still so angry and so upset about what happened to him. So let me just take you through the new details that have emerged first. So here's the headline. Father of four rioter, the Mail called him, 61, killed himself in jail hours after being handed papers for unjust breach of prison rules. An inquest has heard. I just want to remind the Daily Mail that the issue is Peter Lynch was not a rioter. He was a protester. He was a long-term protester. And even the body cam footage released by the police proved that. Watch.
Scum! Praying for our children. I pray for my children. I pray for my children. I pray for the shield. I pray for my children.
Okay, so let me just be very clear, because this matters, okay? And this is why I'm so angry about this case. Peter Lynch did call the police scum, but he was not violent towards them in any way. He did approach the police, but you can see that the police were actually violent towards him. And that matters, because he should never have been locked up. So here's the report as a result of the inquest. A father of four rioter killed himself in jail just hours after being handed papers for an unjust breach of prison rules. Peter Lynch was jailed for 2 years and 8 months in August 2024 by a judge who heard how he was at the front of a mob outside at a hotel housing asylum seekers in Rotherham. He died at HMP Magdalen, South Yorkshire 2 months later, and an inquest last year heard his death was a result of hanging. But at a pre-inquest review on Thursday, and remember, we haven't heard about this at all until now, it was revealed that Lynch had been placed on a charge for a breach of prison rules on the evening of October the 18th, 2024, the night before his death. No details of the allegation he faced were given, but Doncaster's senior coroner Nicola Mundy noted the rioter, that's the Mail's words, by the way, had felt it was unjust. More than half of you are watching this video but not subscribed, so please do me a huge favour. Click the subscribe button now, turn on the notification bell so you'll be alerted to all of our brand new Outspoken videos. The allegation he faced were given, and the coroner also said Lynch disagreed with the account of his actions given by officers in adjudication papers. Ms. Mundy said that she would give her ruling on the inquest scope next week, but indicated she wanted the jury to consider Lynch's mental health and assessments from the point he was arrested and entered police custody. The father of four, of course, part of a crowd that gathered outside the Holiday Inn Express in Rotherham on August the 4th, 2024. Body cam footage was shown to the court of him shouting, "You are protecting people who are killing our kids and raping them," and scum at police with riot shields. I mean, what's untrue? Scum, okay, that's an opinion. But saying you're protecting people who are killing our kids, that's a fact. He was filmed repeatedly challenging officers as they tried to push him back with shields, screaming, "Protect my kids," and yelling, "We are on the streets now to protect our kids." Lynch was also pictured holding a placard asserting the corruption of MPs, judges, the media and police. How is he wrong? How was he wrong? At the sentencing hearing on August the 22nd, 2024, Judge Jeremy Richardson Casey heard how Lynch suffered from diabetes, thyroid issues and angina and had recently had a heart attack. But the judge still locked him up and told him you did not yourself attack any police officer as far as can be detected. But what you did was encourage by your conduct others to behave violently, and you were part of this mob. The Crown Court heard how Lynch had been married for 36 years and had 4 adult children and 3 grandchildren. During the sentencing, Lynch, who was called a family man, pleaded guilty to violent disorder, and he shouted racist and provocative remarks towards police and called asylum seekers child killers. He was working in the packing industry but was recently made unemployed. It's a heartbreaking story, genuinely. And it has broken my heart, actually, for a number of months. And I do not trust what we are being told here. Because why are we only learning now that there was apparently this new charge against him based on his behavior in prison the day before his death? And I just want to remind everyone what Martin Brunt, the crime editor of Sly News, had reported about what was going to be handed to the so-called rioters in prison.
And if they do end up in prison, somebody who told me, somebody who knows about these things, told me that, you know, any right-wing, far-right protester landing up in jail, well, you know, they can expect a pretty cold reception from what he says are Asian gangs inside prison who will be looking out for them.
So forgive me if I don't trust the official narrative. By the way, I just want to show you what type of guy Peter Lynch was, because he had been protesting for years. This is the thing. He didn't go out in anger after the Southport massacre. He had been a long-term protester talking about the corruption of the system during Brexit and during the COVID years. Watch.
Just because you lose, just because you lose, you're a joke. Just because you lose, out. Out means out. What does he mean to you? What does he mean to you?
I suggest you move take
out means out. Democratic right.
What do you think?
Traitors to the country. Traitors to the country. Out means out. Out means out. Out means out.
Historian and broadcaster and New Culture Forum fellow Rafe Hadelman-Koo with me. Rafe, look, he was someone who was deeply concerned about the deep state in the United Kingdom, but his prison sentence, given what he did, given that the judge even admitted that there was no violence against officers, I mean, I think it was utterly barbaric. And why are we only learning now? The fact that there was this new charge against him for behavior in prison, which he disputed the day before he is said to have hanged himself. Let's be honest, Britain isn't just divided, it's being shaped by powerful narratives designed to sway how we think, feel, and act. Mainstream media often masquerades as objective journalism, when in reality, it's agenda-driven activism wrapped in the appearance of news. These narratives don't just inform, they manipulate, leaving millions of people wondering where to turn for the truth. Behind it all are media executives, political insiders, and algorithms deciding what stories rise and what stories never see the light of day. Luckily, there's a solution. Ground News brings together headlines from over 50,000 news sources and makes it easy to understand what's happening. But what really makes it powerful is the transparency. You don't just see the stories, you see the political bias behind every source, the ownership ties, the coverage breakdown across the spectrum. That's why over 1 million people have downloaded Ground News. Even the Nobel Peace Center praised it as an excellent way to stay informed, avoid echo chambers, and expand your worldview. See for yourself at ground.news/outspoken. Let's look at a recent story the right has been ignoring. Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk shared that British defence giant BAE Systems will help Poland make heavy artillery shells. Poland, along with other NATO nations, has seen its munitions stock significantly depleted as large portions of its arsenal have been shared with Ukraine in their ongoing war with Russia. This has raised concerns within NATO about maintaining adequate defence readiness at home following recent Russian drone incursions. On the other side, you won't be surprised to know the left has been slow to cover that Keir Starmer is in totally hot water following the removal of Lord Peter Mandelson as US ambassador following revelations of Mandelson's close ties to Jeffrey Epstein. Email leaks show Starmer faced repeated warnings about Mandelson's links. The news comes as Labour MPs are questioning his leadership ahead of the 2026 May elections. Now, with every story, Ground News shows you the entire spectrum of who's reporting from left, right and centre, how reliable each source is and who owns each outlet. It's everything the corporate press doesn't want you to see. Right now, you can get 40% off the Vantage plan, which gives you unlimited access to all the features I personally use for less than a cup of coffee. Just visit ground.news/outspoken, click the link in the description, or scan the QR code. But now, back to the show.
Yeah, and that's a key point. He disputed this, and we haven't been given any detail about what he is alleged to have done. But let's just remember here, this is a man who isn't by any stretch of the imagination some far-right racist thug. This is not a violent man. This is a serial protester who's generally concerned about the government of this country. Now, you can agree with him or not, you can regard him as a conspiracy theorist or not, but you can't deny that this is somebody who time and again has demonstrated that he uses his right, freedom of expression to protest. And instead of that, he was branded as a far-right rioter. Even today, the title on newspaper headlines calls him a rioter. In fact, he's Britain's 21st century political prisoner. That's who he is. But
Yes.
imagine being a person of his condition, an elderly man with serious physical ailments, suffered a heart attack recently, knowing that he's been slurred and slandered as far right, then to be put into a prison scenario where he'd be looking over his shoulder every moment as these radical Muslim gangs dominate some of those prisons. Remember, this is where many Muslims get radicalized. Over 50% of the Muslim prison chaplains are radical Deobandis, the same cult that gave birth to the Taliban. And is it any surprise, therefore, that he would be perhaps stressed out and playing up in prison, worrying about that sort of future? And let's just remember, he was sentenced to 3 years in prison for holding up a sign and shouting in anger. And he wasn't motivated by racism. He wasn't not giving Nazi salutes. He wasn't like a rabid anti-Semite or anything like that. This was an anger fueled because of the slaughter of young girls in Southport. This was a father and a grandfather concerned about that. And if he had gone before a jury, I don't think he would have been convicted. Who knows? But I don't think he would have gone to prison. This was because so many of these people who were protesting were told that they should plead guilty to all of this. But let's just remember here, there was a man who tried to stab somebody in Knightsbridge because he was burning a Quran. This man literally had a knife, was trying to murder a man who was burning the Quran. He escaped a prison sentence. We had a woman, Victoria Bowen, I think her name was, who threw a milkshake onto Nigel Farage. She escaped prison. And here we have a peaceful man with a loud voice. I perhaps wouldn't have called the police scum, but for that, he was sentenced to 3 years
Well,
in
yes,
prison.
and of
It's
course,
an absolute
Rafe,
disgrace.
Ricky Jones as well. Ricky Jones, who actually suggested the throat should be slit of his political opponents. He escaped jail too. And by the way, Lucy Connolly, in her interview with me, made it very clear, and she was very concerned about what happened to Peter Lynch, but made it clear that she didn't believe that Ricky Jones should go to prison either. But I think the key point, Rafe, that you have made, and you're absolutely right to point it out, he should never have pleaded guilty. Of course, he should never have pleaded guilty. But the problem is, these people, Rafe, were being put under intolerable pressure and being told, and because remember, they were remanded. You know, they were remanded even though they were clearly no threat. I mean, we see Jihad al-Shami, you know, the terrorist who went and killed the people at the Manchester synagogue, who had been reported to the police for extremism and was out on bail for rape. You know, he's on the streets, but of course, Lucy Connolly and Peter Lynch, they were remanded. And there was intolerable pressure put on them because Starmer had made it very clear he wanted quick sentences, he wanted harsh justice. And they misled these people, didn't they, Rafe? Because they tried to make out, look, if you just plead guilty, we're going to remand you now, you'll get a much lighter prison sentence. No way. I mean, they had the book thrown at them.
Absolutely. And I would have hoped and I would have thought that the death of Peter Lynch would have led calls for an inquiry as to how was it that somebody who clearly wasn't a rioter, who clearly wasn't violent, was put in that situation. Indeed, how is it that Lucy Connolly found herself in that situation? Because they were forced to plead guilty. These are people who were stressed, who were pressured, who aren't masters of the law, and they even had, you know, defense lawyers telling them they should. It's utterly disgraceful. But in the first part of your segment today, when you spoke about the reasons that the Israeli football team fans were being banned from coming over, you quoted and you showed an excerpt from that video by that vile Muslim cleric who said essentially that we will show no mercy to Maccabi Tel Aviv fans for traveling to Birmingham. And that was one of the statements that caused the police to decide not to allow the fans to come over. No talk about the police visiting this man absolutely spewing vile hate, I would say an incitement to hatred, clearly, just on the same level or more than the unfortunate tweet of Lucy Connolly. Nothing done about that at all. This is genuine two-tier policing and two-tier justice in evidence.
No, it really is. It really is. And I mean, we saw it with the Oxford student, didn't we? Sam Williams, who's actually nominated to be our worst Briton in the world this week. Initially, the police weren't going to do anything, right? They were just going to ignore it. He's chanting, you know, put the Zionists in the ground. Then there's the pressure that comes from people on our side of the fence, Rafe, saying, well, hang on a moment, you know, if Lucy Connolly is jailed. I worry about all of this, though, because I think fundamentally I want speech to be free. Let's use daylight as the best disinfectant to sort of expose these people. But I do understand the other argument, which is that you're locking up Lucy Connolly, you're locking up Peter Lynch. How on earth can you not lock up these left-wing people? I did find it quite funny, by the way, to end on a lighter note. Bob Villan, you know, that awful bloke sort of moaning about the fact he's been cancelled. It's like, well, you F around and you find out. F around and find out, Bob Villan. And all of that's happening is exactly what should happen. The market is realizing, okay, maybe you won't go to jail